Hi, this is Lou with what I hope will be a brief discussion of military reserves in games. Now, reserves are very important in actual battles because if you've got a reserve that you can commit to stopping an enemy breakthrough or that you can commit to around an enemy flank and essentially win the battle with that movement, then that's really important. Unfortunately, in most games, especially games where there isn't hidden movement, there's really no similar comparable representation. In other words, there's no point in having reserves, really. And basically, there's no point in having reserves because we don't track fatigue and minor damage, I suppose we could say. The idea is that reserves are fresh troops, not troops who have been in the firing line and have exerted themselves for hours. But how many games do you know that are able to keep track of that? Now, with video games, certainly you can do that. And I play a stupid old video game that keeps track of that sort of thing so that keeping reserves makes sense. Empire Deluxe Enhanced Edition, if you're wondering. But most games do not. Now, of course, the challenge to game designers is to have some mechanism that essentially keeps track of that kind of fatigue and having been in the front lines and so on, so that the reserves are more effective. But I'm afraid that's a pretty difficult thing to do unless you have very few units. If you have a game where you have very few units, then it possibly can be done. But if you have a game with a lot of units, like even 20 or 25 on a side, then I think it becomes too difficult. Now, of course, we could point to the block games where, as units fight, their strength goes down. That's not quite meant to be the same thing as fatigue and so on, because that strength does not go back up on its own. It's a permanent reduction, as though a certain number of troops have been killed in that unit. I'm talking about the kind of thing that reduces your combat effectiveness for now, but if you get to rest a day or two and perhaps bring in a few bits of ammunition and so on, you'll be back up to snuff. That's the kind of thing we don't model generally in tabletop games, and that's the kind of thing that makes reserves make more sense. So if you design war games, you can think about that. What can you do to represent that? Thanks for listening.